Monday afternoon, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns getting ready for cutdown day, 4 o'clock tomorrow. They have to be down to the 53-man roster limit. Some news coming out today relative to the Browns roster. Nick Chubb will remain on the physically unable to perform list / reserve list to begin the season. It means he will be unavailable for the first 4 games. Earliest Chubb can play is week 5, remains ahead of schedule, though, to return in 2024. Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski earlier today provided a further update on the Browns' injured players.
Injury update for practice tomorrow. Guys that will be out there: Jack Conklin, D'Anthony Bell, Dalvin Tomlinson, Greg Newsome, David Njoku, Pierre Strong, Jordan Hicks, Tony Fields. Jed is going to come off PUP, will not practice tomorrow, but progressing. Denzel Ward, I don't have an update other than say he's making good progress.
So if you're counting, that was 6 starters that are progressing towards being available for Dallas. It's 27% of their starting lineup. Let's welcome in Steve Palazzolo, 33rd team, as well as co-host of Check the Mic. Steve, you hear those names and it's like, okay, regular season, let's get that going.
Yeah, I mean, at least they've got some time to practice and get up to speed. I mean, it's kind of a new NFL, right? I mean, you see fewer starters in the preseason as it is, and from an injury perspective, it's so tough to predict which teams are going to stay healthy from start to finish. And I think the big thing in today's NFL too, with the 17-game schedule, soon to be 18. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a long time. It's a grind, and making sure that guys are healthy and able to get through the season is crucial. So, a couple weeks to get ramped up and just be ready to go.
So you guys are getting ready to do your AFC previews this week, Monday through Thursday, on Check the Mic. You look at the Browns roster. What do you see as a guy that does it nationally and is much more objective than the local guys? What do you see with this roster?
I really like their roster. I mean, I like what Cleveland's done the last couple of years. I don't think there's a whole lot of glaring weaknesses. A lot of times when I'm looking at a team, you start with the quarterback, and when I'm looking at the offense, we'll talk about Deshaun in a minute, but I like to look at the offensive line. Are they good enough? Are they competent enough? They don't have to be one of the league's best, but they have to be able to pass protect, add value in the run game. Cleveland's had one of the better offensive lines for a while, and mostly like what they've done at receiver. I think Amari Cooper was a great pickup last year. Jerry Jeudy has definitely underachieved, but I think that combination has a chance to be really good once they're out there together. We saw a breakout season by David Njoku last season. I think that continues. And, once Nick Chubb is back, I think that run game can be special again. And, Jerome Ford did a nice job. And then defensively, they loaded up on that defensive line last year, and that paid dividends, the way that defense played, depth in the back 7. So, top to bottom, I really think the Browns have built a very good roster. Of course, it will come down to what they get out of the quarterback position.
Yep, and along those lines, CBS Sports, 10 things we learned from the 2024 NFL preseason. Not sure how you could learn anything about the Browns, but the Browns offense could be in trouble. Kevin Stefanski is widely and rightfully regarded as an offensive mind, but there are red flags with his personnel going into 2024. Deshaun Watson the biggest, but so is QB's chemistry with Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy after they missed time for different reasons in the offseason. Throw in injuries to the offensive line, and they may be leaning on their defense again. Yeah, they've been banged up on offense, so I could see the offense being a work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, if the continuity on the offensive line perhaps is going to be a question, but again, most of those guys have played together once Conklin's back out there, and then from a receiver standpoint, yeah, there's definitely some chemistry questions as far as Deshaun Watson, with Jerry Jeudy. But again, I think him and Amari Cooper did well pretty quickly last year as far as connecting. Again, it just comes down to Deshaun Watson to me, who has not played good football since 2020. That's a long time. That was a long time ago. There were no fans in the stands. It's been a while since we've seen Deshaun Watson play well. He has one of the worst sack rates in the NFL since joining the Browns, and it's just been inconsistent. I think you expected maybe that Watson would be a little rusty early on in 2022 when he was coming off the suspension. But even last year, every time he seemed to put together a good game, there was an injury or it would go south, even just from an on-field perspective. So It'll come down to him. I think the rest of the offense, there's a pretty decent track record that they've got good enough pass catchers, good enough offensive linemen, assuming that the injuries don't really, hurt their tackles too badly. I think the offense is fine as long as Watson, somehow gets back on track or at least closer to where he was prior to being a Brown.
So Kevin Stefanski talked today about what he specifically wants to see from this offense early.
There's obviously things that you adjust year to year that you work through going back to offseason program and into training camp. And then as you get into training camp, maybe last week and certainly this week, you start to streamline what you're doing. And that's part of the conversations we're having now. You can't run everything you want to run in week one. It's a long season. So you're trying to look at what your players do best. And then also, which is a big part of it, what matches up versus the opponent that you have that week. So those are all conversations we're having right now.
And Steve, again, it's game plan specific. I'm imagining based on matchups and those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting outlook to have, and I think a smart one. I mean, people used to talk about Bill Belichick all the time and how his teams in September, they'd have a 2-2, first few weeks, but it was Thanksgiving was kind of that cutoff point where it's like, all right, now the real football begins. The Browns don't necessarily have that ability to just sleepwalk through the first half of the season or anything like that, but it is important to continue to build from an offensive standpoint. And the other part is it's a different team every year. And the important part is to adjust to your players, adjust to players like Jerry Jeudy who are coming in and his route running ability. And once again, the biggest thing will be, doing what's best for Deshaun Watson and making sure that he has the ability to succeed within this offense.
Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hi, this is Rico. Last week I was pounding the table complaining that Watson wasn't getting any playing time during the preseason. I understand why Stefanski declined to play him. Literally, our hopes and dreams are in this quarterback's hands. We need to finally see the Watson the Browns so dearly paid for. They put the reputation and their organizational beliefs into question when they acquired him. I mean, they suffered so much backlash from the media and fans alike. It's time for the Browns to gain a solid return on their massive investment in Watson. And to Watson, if you can hear this, it's go time, brother. Let's get it. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Steve, they gave up a bunch, but it's pretty impressive. We just talked about the roster. So they haven't had a first-round pick in 3 years. They've been able to keep pretty much every free agent they've wanted to, and they've been able to add to it. So from that standpoint, Andrew Berry's done a pretty nice job. He's ultimately going to be judged, though, on that trade, likely.
Yeah, it's a crazy job, the general manager of a team, because I'm with you. I believe Andrew Berry has done a fantastic job at 21 of the 22 starters and building depth on the roster. Again, that defensive line went from Myles Garrett and nobody to one of the best and the deepest in the entire NFL in an offseason. The Browns they're really analytically sound as well. I know they have a deep front office beyond Andrew Berry. They do a nice job of getting a lot of opinions in there and getting a lot of people in there. And I think that's a reason why they've built the best roster, or one of the best rosters. But it all comes down to the quarterback position. That is how you end up judging a general manager, fair or not. And, to me, you look at what they did last year with, the 5 quarterbacks starting, with Joe Flacco coming off the couch and the way he played. That is a feather in the cap of Kevin Stefanski, of Andrew Berry, of this roster. The fact that they were able to win. Now it's a matter of, can Watson do that? Can they find the comfort level with him? I don't think they have to get the guy that looked like he was going to be a superstar with the Houston Texans, because he was on an incredible track those first 3 or 4 years in Houston. I don't even think they need that. I think a little bit more aggressiveness. Watson used to be able to flip the field with big time throws. He used to have that ability to create offense out of nowhere. He's not been showing that with the Browns, the ability to drive the ball down the field, because he'll always take those negative plays, the sacks, maybe put the ball in harm's way a little bit more than you'd like, but he would at least offset it with special plays with his arm and with his legs, and we just haven't seen that. So whether it's part of a mental game to get him to play a little bit more relaxed like he seemed to be playing with Houston, or whether it's something schematically, the ability to lean into having Cooper and Jeudy and Njoku, 3 guys who could all get down the field and create big plays, they have to find a way to get Watson to get back to where he was in Houston, at least creating some of those big plays, because that's what Joe Flacco brought to this offense. I don't think Flacco played a clean brand of football when he was here. He was throwing the ball to the defense a bunch. There was, fumble sixes against the Rams. There was some stuff going on, but he was aggressive, got these guys playing better, got Njoku to play, to his capability. So Watson needs to be able to find some of that magic that he used to have in Houston. Steve
Palazzolo from 33rdteam.com and the co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. And I can step aside, take a quick time out. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread, and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, loot, and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions and prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Steve Palazzolo from 33rd Team, as well as co-host of Check the Mic. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Long-time listener in University Heights. We've been a lot better the past few seasons, and that's great, but I think we also need to see things as they are and sometimes ask the tough questions to keep getting better. I think Andrew Berry's been a great GM, but some of the most important pieces, we have to say that, those were there before he arrived, and that his impact and legacy, when you look back at it, will really come down to the Deshaun Watson trade. And if you look at any GM that goes all in for a quarterback, either with a top pick or a mega contract, and what we gave up to get Deshaun as both, is defined by how that player performs. I'm rooting for him to perform like the player we saw in Houston, but really if he doesn't this year, I think we need to hold ourselves to a standard of greatness and say that a GM that goes all in and it doesn't work out probably needs to go. Would a great franchise really stand for that? If you think about some of the great franchises in the NFL and other sports, to me, it just doesn't sit right. So thanks again, Dave. Really appreciate the show. Wishing you the best.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Steve, I have a little bit of a different take on it. I think what happened is, and again, I can't disagree with the trade has not been good. But what happens is you take a guy number 1 overall. You took Baker Mayfield number 1 overall. It didn't work out. So now you're trying to fix a mistake that was made there. I mean, they could have Lamar Jackson. They could have had Josh Allen. They ended up with Baker Mayfield. So now you're swinging for the fences, and I applaud that, actually. He looked at it and he said, Baker Mayfield's okay. We need better. It hasn't worked out, but I like that thinking. I don't think you get rid of a GM for thinking that way. That's the way you win a championship, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a tough one for fans to maybe come to terms with sometimes. But, go back to what I said in the last segment. I think if you're evaluating a general manager simply off of his quarterback decisions, I don't know if that's the right way to go, because look, the Ravens also took a 25-year-old tight end in Hayden Hurst ahead of Lamar Jackson. They ended up, reconciling and going to get Lamar Jackson later, but it wasn't like they had the perfect evaluation. The Cowboys stumbled into Dak Prescott after they really wanted to trade up to go get Paxton Lynch in the first round. In other words, there's no general manager out there or evaluators who are just always on point when it comes to the quarterback position, which is always going to be the biggest driver in the NFL. So yeah, I like the aggressiveness. Sometimes you do have to take some swings to try to get better at the position. It's a really uncomfortable position to have, say, the 10th to 20th best quarterback or 10 to 25th best quarterback. I think there's plenty of those guys available right now, including a Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. Are they excited about what they were able to do with him last year? Yes. Do they think Baker Mayfield's going to take them to the promised land right now? Probably not. So it's a really tricky situation for the general manager, and the tricky situation for the general manager to only get judged by making sure that he gets a top 5 quarterback, right? So, the Bengals are only one of the best teams in the league this year, or, the last few years, because they happen to have the number 1 overall pick, and it was a year that Joe Burrow came out. So I think I would rather show patience, go with the general manager who has been consistent, who has built a really good team, a sound team that makes good financial decisions, overall has drafted well, built a really deep roster, And then the quarterback position, you just have to continue to take chances. Even if the Watson one doesn't, work out, you get back and you take the next shot at the position, but you still have a better foundation and infrastructure around that next quarterback if it does get to that point.
Yeah, without question. The thing that hurts, though, is when you have the number 1 overall pick and you miss like that, that's rough. And again, Baker Mayfield's, he's a decent NFL quarterback. He's not a number 1 over, you know what I mean? To say anything other than you missed with that pick, number 1 overall, you're putting on rose-colored glasses.
But very, very few people were saying Josh Allen is the slam dunk number 1.
You're right.
And very few people had Lamar Jackson even going in the top 10. The previous year, Patrick Mahomes went at number 10 and was the 3rd quarterback off the board. That's the point. And look, the quarterback position is held to a completely different standard, because you really want to have a top 5 to 8 quarterback that's a difference maker. If we held every position to that standard, most draft picks would seem like a fail unless you got one of the top 5 to 8 players at the position. So it's just a whole different dynamic at quarterback. And again, I just wouldn't judge an evaluator top to bottom just based off of how they pick the quarterback, because I don't think there's a history of one evaluator or a team that's pristine at making those picks, except maybe the Packers.
Yeah, they've had pretty good quarterback play for a while. This is from Mike Sando, the Athletics national writer. 2024 quarterback tiers. Patrick Mahomes 1, Joe Burrow 2, Josh Allen number 3. Hard to argue with any of those. You go to the middle of the pack. Trevor Lawrence 16, Kyler Murray 17, Deshaun Watson 18, and Baker Mayfield 19. About Watson, NFL executive, it's just a bad fit. You have an RPO quarterback and a play-action offense, not a good mix. Defensive coach, better pocket passer than given credit. He's always been slow going through his progressions because he knew if it broke down, people couldn't catch him. A lot of stuff he did in Houston, there was designed RPOs and movement plays for him. Maybe progression is a tick slow. Can't explain it. It just feels like something's missing. Offensive coach, wonder if he loves it enough. Should be way better than this. A lot of the tweaks that they mention in there, the NFL executive and the defensive coach, I think that's what they're trying to do with Ken Dorsey and the revamped offense. They're trying to build it around Deshaun Watson, and I think they've been asking him to do it. I agree. He's not good at play action and those kind of things. So don't ask him to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the RPO thing is a little oversimplified. I mean, the true RPO is, throwing a slant behind the linebacker if the run is covered, right? If they're attacking the run. That's not exactly what Watson was doing in Houston. They were running plenty of play action. What they were doing, but they had DeAndre Hopkins, and a lot of times they had Will Fuller running deep over routes, running down the field, and Watson was hitting them with some explosive plays. He also had just a better natural, feel for playmaking inside and outside the pocket. I don't know if he's lost a step. We saw this a little bit with Russell Wilson. Now Wilson's in his mid-30s, but he loses a step and he's unable to break contain as often or as easily as he did previously, and you lose some of that, some of that special ability. I don't know that it's the RPO thing, because that's really a couple plays a game. I think there's still play action opportunities that Watson did take advantage of in Houston. You just need to, trust those speed receivers on the outside, and he's got to make those throws. That has definitely been lacking. The big playability, the big time throws have been lacking from Watson's game, and that's going to be on Stefanski and company to figure out the best way to get that out of him, to get those big plays back, because that's what made him special in Houston.
It seems to me they spread it out a little bit more and played more shotgun and not as many 2 tight ends. And I think that's kind of, and I'm with you with the RPOs, but I think they want to spread it out more and let him pick matchups that you're looking for.
Yeah, look, I think Houston back then did a good combination of tightening it up to run play action and take shots, and then running empty sets, right? And I do think Watson does a nice job running empty. The other part about Houston, he was at Clemson, he was kind of 1 read or 2 reads and run. I didn't know if that was a system thing at Clemson or just the fact that, hey, he was a special runner. But he was really getting rid of the ball pretty quickly coming out of college. And then all of a sudden in Houston, he was kind of run around a little bit more behind the line of scrimmage, buy time and make plays. he just kind of played football, and it was a little bit more natural. So I don't know how you get back to that necessarily, other than, hope that he's able to capture some of that magic, because he was a good outside of structure player with Houston, and you haven't seen that too much so far with Cleveland.
So relative to the defense, this is a tweet from the 33rd team. It's really interesting. Percentage of opponents' plays for 0 or negative yardage last season. And the Browns were number one, over 40%, 41.3% ahead of the Ravens, 37.0%, Cowboys 35.9%. You see Falcons, Chiefs, and Jets. So that's kind of one of the reasons earlier you had alluded to the fact they don't need them to be 5,000-yard Deshaun Watson. Take care of the football, make big plays, and don't turn the ball over. That was the thing that, and I get pushback from the fans here a lot. Flacco turned the ball over. I think it's 14 times. It was something ridiculous. And with a good defense, take care of the football.
Yeah, they still got away with it last year. Again, Flacco was legendary for what he did, but he wasn't like he played this perfectly clean brand of football. I think he was volatile, right? There was big plays, and there was also some turnovers. I would rather almost see Watson play, as long as Watson's going to get those big plays back, you can handle some turnovers. But the defense was special last year, the way they played as a team. I think that stat, having over 40% 0 or negative yardage, that speaks to how much man coverage they played last year. They played as much, if not more, man than any other team in the league. They made throws difficult for opposing quarterbacks. They let their pass rush get after it. Again, the off-season additions of Zadarius Smith, Obo Okoronkwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, those pay dividends because they wanted to rush with 4 to complement Myles Garrett. Garrett is unblockable every single week. I don't care what the sack totals tell you. He is unblockable. You add those other complements, all of a sudden quarterbacks have to make quicker decisions, and they're doing it against an aggressive press man back 7. So that led to a lot of those negative plays, and that's what gave the Browns defense a really good opportunity to make that big improvement last year, and why they were so good as far as team stats go from last year.
Steve Palazzolo from 33rd Team and the co-host of the Check the Mic podcast, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Steve Palazzolo from 33rd Team, as well as a co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I think Jamari Thrash is going to be really good. He has proved it in all the preseason games. I think he's better than Elijah Moore. I think he's better than Cedric Tillman. I think he's better than all those players combined. But soon I think he's going to be wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 1, because look at who they have to go against. Against the Bengals, they have Jamar Chase, who's really good. And then against the Ravens, they have Zay Flowers, and against the Steelers, they're the Steelers. I think that Jamari Thrash is going to be a biggest weapon to Cincinnati Bengals Jamar Chase. Thanks. Tell me what you think.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Steve, I would just caution, things are a lot different once it's regular season. Thrash had a really good preseason. I'm intrigued. When you look at Thrash, what do you see?
I mean, Jamar Chase is special. Let's not make that comparison yet. But look, I was impressed with Jamari Thrash. I know my podcast partner, Sam Monson, was a huge fan of Thrash coming out of Louisville. I thought he showed really good toughness over the middle. I know he had the deep touchdown, too, against Seattle. Also had a drop in there. Had a fumble that nobody really got to see, batted out of bounds. So a couple of those negative plays. But I was most impressed with Thrash's feel and toughness. Catching the ball over the middle, taking a hit, creating after the catch, and just in limited reps, general feel for where to be, how to get open against zones. I think that bodes well. Being quarterback friendly is really important. Taking to an NFL system, knowing where to be, really underrated, especially for college receivers transitioning to the NFL. So early on in limited time, I thought Thrash did a great job of that. And, with those wide receiver 3 snaps kind of up for grabs, he has a chance, I think, to get in there and get some targets, especially a lot of times what you see with rookies is it takes them, some guys hit the ground running, but some guys take 5 or 6 weeks. Or you have a Christian Watson a couple years ago for the Green Bay Packers, did almost nothing until week 9, and then was just uncoverable in a huge part of their offense in the second half of the season. So rookies always develop at a different time, different pace, and Thrash has a chance to contribute this year just because I think his general feel for the game and the toughness that he showed over the middle of the field.
So this is bold predictions for the Browns in 2024 from the Bleacher Report. Number 1, Deshaun Watson will regain his 4,000-yard form. Number 2, Jerome Ford leads the team in rushing. And number 3, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy combined for 2,000 yards receiving. I could see that happening, I guess. I think if Nick Chubb is healthy, they'll probably run the ball. And I'm curious to see if you spread it out and you're in 11 personnel, can you get lighter boxes for Nick Chubb? If you can, and Nick Chubb is anywhere near the Nick Chubb, look out.
I completely agree. I saw him squatting a few weeks ago. I think he'll be ready. I know he's starting out on the pup, and look, I think that's better for the long-term health of the run game anyway. So would love to see Chubb get back out there. I would never doubt him after all the injuries that he's bounced back from, and just an underrated career nationally for Nick Chubb, because I think he has Saquon Barkley-like big play ability, and I think Saquon's one of the best big play backs in the NFL. You don't think about that necessarily with Chubb, but he's got that type of big play ability, but he's better than a guy like Saquon Barkley because of how he creates in tight areas, and he creates with bad run blocking as well. So I think Chubb's been one of the best pure running backs in the league over the last few years, since entering the league. And as far as the pass game goes, I could see it. I mean, 4,000 yards is no longer really a massive threshold in a 17-game schedule in the way teams pass now, but having Amari Cooper, having Jerry Jeudy, they should be the best 1-2 punch that they've had in a bit here, even if Jeudy is a little underachieving compared to what we expected. Both guys know how to get open against man coverage, and I think they have the ability to certainly go over 1,000 and get Watson back over 4,000 as well.
Curious about your thoughts on this one. This is from CBS Sports. Every team's projected win total. So DraftKings has the Browns' projected win total at 8.5. Will Brenson's projected record is 7-10. Browns were very up and down in terms of their defensive performances, depending on home-road splits. That's a red flag. The other side of the ball, biggest loss might be Bill Callahan. Mixon in the unknown timeline for Nick Chubb. I think you'd make the case for the rushing offense could fall off a cliff. How can anyone possibly suggest Deshaun Watson will be good again? We haven't seen it in more than 3 years. I think Stefanski would prefer having Baker Mayfield on this team, given his system. I can guarantee you that's not the case. It didn't end well for the coach and Baker Mayfield, and they're changing the system. I think 8.5, I think it's awfully light. I think 9, 10 is kind of the floor, and in this division, probably 11, 12 is the ceiling.
Yeah, the tough part is going to be the division. I mean, it is the best division in football, I would say, top to bottom. You've got the Ravens and the Bengals, and with Joe Burrow healthy, and again, presuming health again for the reigning MVP and Lamar Jackson, that is a tough division. The Steelers might have their question marks at quarterback, but they also have a good, solid roster around those guys, plus just the Mike Tomlin factor that they're almost guaranteed to win their 9 games and at least not have a losing season. So, 8.5 is not a crazy win total, just because they're always a little bit lighter than you feel like they're supposed to be coming off, when the books are putting those together. It's uncomfortable not knowing exactly what you're getting from Deshaun Watson, or being, 11 or 12 games into his Browns career and not seeing any semblance of where he was in Houston, and not knowing if that's ever going to turn around. Is the switch going to flip for Watson? I thought some of the other points that Will made, not bad. Bill Callahan, I'm a huge fan of his, obviously, and it's a huge win for Tennessee. I don't know if they necessarily feel that in year 1 as far as the offensive line goes. The only thing I'd add is the defense has a chance to regress just because defense is really tough. Even when you have the same exact depth chart, the same exact roster, the same scheme, it's a little bit more volatile than offense, right? So all of the success that they had last year, limiting opposing passing games, we also saw in the playoffs they couldn't, busted coverages left and right, and they couldn't cover anybody against Houston. So defense is just naturally volatile. It is tough to depend on the defense year over year, which is why the offense is so key to get Watson on track and to get that chemistry early on.
Steve Palazzolo, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Remember, you can check Steve out Monday through Thursday this week, the AFC previews, including the AFC North. Steve, as always, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Steve Palazzolo, make sure you check him out, 33rd Team. He is co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE roster cutdown day. It's about 24 hours away, 4 o'clock tomorrow. Browns did make some moves. We told you earlier some of the guys coming off the PUP list, getting ready to practice: D'Anthony Bell, Jack Conklin, Greg Newsome II, Dalvin Tomlinson. Jedrick Wills will come off the PUP list, but will not practice until a little bit later in the week. And then these guys have been waived. Wyatt Davis, Lucas Haversick, the kicker, will probably find his way back onto the practice squad, I'm guessing. Zach Johnson, Matabike, who's a Pathways guy, so he can come back, doesn't count against the 53-man roster. Okafor, with the guys coming back, he was a depth piece. Aiden Robbins is kind of interesting. I'm guessing could find his way onto the practice squad. And perhaps the biggest name of them all is Isaiah Thomas, the defensive end. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, you look at that, there's nobody that's shocking, but Thomas is a guy that they might bring him back to the practice squad, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's what happens. It's like putting the puzzle together, and the strategy is to try to, see if a guy's going to make it through the waivers. And sometimes the more recent draft picks, like Isaiah McGuire, was like a 4th-round pick. And I think it might have come down to him or Thomas. Thomas has been around for a few more years, and he was a 7th-round pick. I think they like him, but I think that they felt like there's a better chance to get him back on the practice squad, than waiving an Isaiah McGuire. And so there's calculations and all these. He's obviously the biggest name, on here so far, but these are just moving down to the 78. You still got 25, more to go. So that's, sometimes you try to sneak maybe a little better known player in earlier to see if teams get lost in the shuffle or players and get them back.
So it is likely that Mike Hall Jr. Will be he'll end up on the commissioner's exempt list either today or tomorrow in wake of the domestic violence charges. That is according to a source telling Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat report for cleveland.com, that Fred, that's not a surprise. Mike Hall, the league will figure that out. Let's get into the 53-man roster. You did a projection, and I'm curious as to how difficult it was for you. You also did the 16-man practice squad. Let's take a look at the offense and the defense that you have on this 53-man roster. So Chubb is going to be on the PUP. He's out 4 weeks. Then you got Ford, Foreman, Strong, and Himes. You've got 6 wide receivers: Cooper, Judy, Moore, Tillman, Thrash, and Bell, and Njoku and Akins, the only tight ends. You see the tackles. You have James Hudson is that 4th swing tackle there behind the 3 guys that will sort things out. And then the guards, Batonio, Teller, Zinter, and you have the undrafted free agent Cone making it. Posick and Harris. You look over at the defense, and it's Garrett Smith, Okoronkwo, Wright, and McGuire, who we talked about. Tomlinson, who's just been activated. Harris, Jefferson, Hurst, and Hall. Now, if he's on the commissioner's exempt list, that would open up a spot there potentially. JOK, Hicks, Fields, Bush, and Watson. You got the rookie from Missouri making it. And then you got Ward, Emerson, Newsome, Mitchell, Harden, and Hardy. And then the safeties, you got Delpit, Thornhill, Hickman, and McLeod. I'm curious, toughest decisions when you went through that. Who are the guys that you kind of went back and forth weighing and thinking, this guy can make it, this guy can't make it? And you look at that roster. That roster's pretty darn deep.
Well, what makes it difficult, and I put that in above it, the explanation, is there was 7 players on lists, and you didn't know because there was no updates on who or who would not be put on the active roster. And turns out 5 of the 7 were taken off the list, but Nick Chubb and Nyheim Hines, the 2 running backs, were left on the list. So that makes it difficult when you're projecting. I put D'Anthony Bell because they had a lot of safeties and had numbers. I left him on injured reserve because I didn't know. That's why he's not on there. He's now going to be on the roster. I can almost assure you that, because they activated him today. I'd be surprised if they cut him. But the wide receiver, I went back and forth with Michael Woods and David Bell. David Bell, again, we don't know if he's ready to come back or if he's going to be out. He's missed 2 weeks. They like him. But again, my reasoning is the way they think. David Bell is a 3rd-round pick more recently, and I think they feel Michael Woods would have a better chance to making it through waivers, because last year he was on waivers, and he was on the practice squad if they want him back, as opposed to David Bell. So every year Andrew Berry has kept 6 on the roster at wide receiver. So that's why I went with 6. I put 2 tight ends. I think it again is for the wiggle room. Since they got Nick Harris, I think he kind of can help them in a blocking tight end fullback role, what Gio Ricci appeared to be doing before he got hurt. If they add a 3rd tight end, I don't think he's on the roster. He could be somebody they add in a trade or in a waiver pickup. So the toughest ones, yes. And not knowing Mike Hall, I had to put him on the roster. If I knew he was going to be exempt, I would have left him off, and that would have opened up a spot for Jawan Briggs or Sam Kamara, or even I think there's another defensive tackle, that could push for it. So, or Siaki Ika, even though I think his days are numbered, or his day is numbered. So, yeah, there was tough decisions, and there's going to be surprises. There's going to be guys, even at cornerback. I think Khalif Halassi they like a lot, but I kind of went with Justin Hardy, the local guy that was a Pro Bowl special teams guy who also plays cornerback. I kept him on the roster in favor of Halassi. So, a couple of those, positions are going to be fluid, and it kind of comes down to what they think health-wise.
When you look at areas that they might add. Do you think they add a running back, given that Hines is still on the injured list? So is Nick Chubb. Or are they trying to get Aiden Robbins on there so he could be a depth piece? Or do you think they go out and do you think they look to get a veteran guy that can help for the first 4 weeks to go with Foreman and Ford?
A lot depends on the health of Dante Foreman. He got hurt the other night. Stefanski said he wasn't going to practice tomorrow. Jerome Ford, Deontay Foreman, and Pierre Strong, to me, would be the three, kind of the same way they had without Chubb last year. I think they would like to get Robbins back to the practice squad if they can, or if they do cut Pierre Strong, to try to bring him back. But with knowing that Chubb is going to miss 4 games, yes, they'll have 3 or 4 in the roster. The biggest question, again, is Foreman, and what are they going to do with Nyheim Hines? I mean, when he talked to us at minicamp in June, he expected to start practicing the 1st of August. Again, we have no update. He wasn't activated, or he didn't pass his physical if he even tried. When Stefanski was asked about him today, he said he thought he was still on the non-football injury list, and he didn't know, he made it sound like he might only be on it another day or 2. So if they think he's going to be ready, that solves a few problems. He was who they signed to be the returner. So you don't necessarily need to keep a returner if you're expecting Hines to be back for the regular season and be the punt and kick returner, as well as the 3rd or 4th running back.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread, and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, loot, and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play a cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions and prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Why can't we just be a team where they say what's going on? The guy's going to play quarterback the last game. He isn't going to play quarterback. You talk to our coach. There's nothing wrong with him. They talk to him. He goes, I don't even know what's going on. Come on. Why can't we ever just be a team where they say what's going on? I know one thing for sure. If we had Baker Mayfield, we wouldn't be having this problem. And I've said that before. And one more thing about Andrew Berry. Why did we sign Cade York back and then give him away and then bring in another kicker? Where's our real kicker? I don't know what's going on with this organization, but I'm getting fed up with it. It's really sad. Take care, guys.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Fred, we'll get to the Browns and their information in a minute. Relative to the Watson trade, the reason you had to make the Watson trade was because John Dorsey kicked the number 1 overall draft pick and made Baker Mayfield pick. Think about it. You could have had Josh Allen. You could have had Lamar Jackson. You ended up with Baker Mayfield. So you had to make the trade to try to get a quarterback. The other thing that I would say, Cade York wasn't going to make this team. So he turned a guy that you brought in into a 7th-round pick. He's done pretty good maneuvering those 5th, 6th, and 7th-round picks and turning them into things that actually help the team. I'm assuming that you like Amari Cooper. You got him for a 5th-round pick. Berry has notoriously done pretty good things with additional day 3 picks.
Well, exactly, and I don't think he's done. In fact, as we're speaking now with 24 hours before the deadline's official, I can guarantee you he's on the phone, looking. I think I saw Seattle just lost one of their top edge rushers. You might be able to swing a deal, with one of your young guys, move them and get a draft pick. That's what they do is in draft day, they'll move a seventh and a sixth or a fifth to move up a few spots, or as you said, they'll trade, a fifth or sixth or seventh round pick or two to pick up a veteran who has a contract situation. They traded Chris Williams, who really looked good in the preseason game against the Vikings, with a sack or two and a safety to the Bears last week because he wasn't going to make this roster, and picked up a sixth or seventh round pick next year. And these all accumulate. Cade York, who you said wasn't going to make the team, but they were looking at as possibly, practice squad guy until Dustin Hopkins signed a 3-year extension. That happened after York was signed, so he wasn't going to be around, and so they turned it into a pick. I can guarantee you that they are trying to trade one of their quarterbacks. I would assume it'd be Tyler Huntley, and try to get a fifth, sixth, seventh round pick rather than just cut him. And I think they're getting calls from teams on Dorian Thompson-Robinson as well. I think they would rather keep him, but I think one of those guys they will try to flip to a team that might have suffered a quarterback injury and get something out of them. So that's what they're doing with their areas of need. And like we said, tight end might be a position that you could flip a player for another player rather than going through the waiver wire. And so there's a lot of strategy involved in it. As far as the Baker Mayfield situation, I mean, it's kind of ancient history. I think he signed his own papers out of town when he threw the coach under the bus and said he wasn't going to play in that final game. And then, when they were talking with Watson about a trade, even though Watson turned it down, he said he wanted out of here. They're not going to put up with that. I think they also realized that they felt they needed to do better at the position. So he wasn't without drama. The last year he played, he played whether he should have or not. That's partly to blame on him. So anyway, there you go.
The thing that's amazing, though, is Browns fans apply the same level of criticism to the drafting of Baker Mayfield, #1 overall, that you are to the Deshaun Watson trade. The Deshaun Watson trade hadn't been great so far. The Baker Mayfield #1 overall was a horrible pick. You could have had Josh Allen, who's ranked the top 3 quarterback. You could have had Lamar Jackson, who's ranked the top 5 quarterback. You took Baker Mayfield. That was John Dorsey. That's why he's not a GM anymore. And relative to trading picks, you're turning them into assets. These guys weren't going to make the team. The Commanders gave you a 7th-round pick because they wanted Cade York. That means if he was on the practice squad, they were going to sign him.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's all kinds of things. And, when, like you said, that was on John Dorsey, and who knows what Andrew Berry would have done. But the move they made was to go get Deshaun Watson. Everything else, it's hard to argue with what they've done in the roster. Yes, there's been decisions, made here and there, but they're going to live and die pretty much on their success at the Deshaun Watson trade. It's pretty much paid for now. You've got all those picks behind you. Now you just owe him money. And as I've said here before, he just needs to stay on the field. If he stays on the field this year, I can almost assure you his numbers will be as good as Baker Mayfield's would have been, or were in his best year here.
All right, you wrote an article, Shelby Harris talking about the defense, and he thinks there's another level that this year's defense can reach. Take us through that.
Well, I think, he talked about, first of all, that he felt like coming back here after a 1-year deal because he wanted to be a part of Jim Schwartz's second year in the system, and felt good enough about the players returning that he wanted to be a part of it. And I think those veterans, Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, up front, bringing in Quentin Jefferson, that they have a good rotation and they have a chance. Sure, they had some mistakes in the postseason, but statistically they were #1. They returned virtually everybody they wanted to. and the guys they didn't return, they feel like they upgraded at the position. So they feel that the defense can even be better. But he was alluding to a healthy Deshaun Watson, not just defense. He felt like as a team, this offense really had a lot of potential, and the team as a whole had all the components, to make a run for not only the playoffs, but a Super Bowl run.
All right, before we go to break, you wrote another article, takeaways from a late night game in Seattle. Take us through that, what you saw, and kind of what jumped out to you, final preseason game against Seahawks.
Well, thank you for anybody that stayed up late to watch that, to read it. If you didn't, I stayed up and watched it for you. Basically, it was get the preseason over and get on to the regular season. Again, 30 players didn't play. The majority of the 30 players are the players that you're going to watch against the Cowboys. So it was really for a roster spot or two. And my takeaway was, I thought DTR again played well. I think Tyler Huntley played well. I think that's going to draw interest around the NFL. When you look at backup quarterbacks in the NFL, a lot of them aren't very good. And I think that both those are better than some of what the teams have and those that got injured. So I think that boded well. I think Jamari Thrash stepped up. Michael Woods played well. Cedric Tillman, I think, really solidified being the number 4 receiver and really can push to be the 3. So overall, there were some bright spots in what you saw, but I don't think it's really going to matter. They were 0-3. Nobody's going to remember the preseason. Special teams had breakdowns, but you had most guys playing in that game, remember, at this time tomorrow, are not going to be on the Browns or probably in the NFL.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, some conflicting ideas about the Browns and their quarterback situation from NFL Network's Good Morning Football. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Manti Te'o, cast of Good Morning Football on NFL Network, debating the Browns quarterback position for 2024.
You get into a situation where you invested so much money into a player and it's not working out, and you're just hoping and praying that all of this money just... Listen, Myles Garrett isn't getting younger. Nick Chubb isn't getting younger. Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, David Njoku. You have the supporting cast to be really, really good. Year in and year out, you have a defense that just dominates the NFL football game. But your quarterback hasn't been able to produce like how you're hoping them to. So in this situation, it's just one of those things where, hey, it was something that we were hoping worked, but it hasn't. Let's move on. Let's take advantage of what we have, and the window is now. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, it's... I mean, that's,
Do you agree?
I hear you. Huh?
Do you agree?
I don't agree to move on from Deshaun Watson. I'm probably one of the very few people that still believes in Deshaun Watson. I know we have not seen, Deshaun Watson play in, more than 6 games since 2020. I mean, and that's when he was playing at a high level. Obviously, there's been off-the-field issues. There's been injuries. And this could be the very first year we see that. Like, he could be a candidate for the comeback player of the year. I truly believe they've got all the weapons around him.
Fred, I can understand people questioning. It's been a couple of years, but he's been hurt. And I think this is really the thing that I think is going to enable Deshaun Watson to be as good as he can be. They're finally not asking him to do play action, and they're going to play to his strengths, which I don't think they did the first couple of years.
Well, there's no question it's an unknown. That's why they, went out and brought in Ken Dorsey. Alex Van Pelt, to move on from him was a very tough decision for Kevin Stefanski because he was close with him, but just felt that they needed somebody that knows how to deal with a mobile quarterback and that ran a system similar to what he ran in Houston. It didn't work in the limited sample in the first 2 years, but again, he played 6 games coming off an 11-game suspension his first year, never really got going. Last year, we all know the injuries started, stopped, started, stopped. I still think if he'd have stayed on the field, I think he would have been fine. So that's what it's all about. I've been saying it ad nauseum, writing it, that it's all about him staying on the field. This team does not need him to come out of the gate playing at an elite level to win. They have an exceptional defense and they have a good offense. Joe Flacco, nothing taken away from him, stepped into a good offensive situation and flourished. It's on Ken Dorsey, Kevin Stefanski, and that was their task to allow Deshaun Watson to flourish. If he stays on the field, I think he can play average to above average at best, or at least. And last year, quarterback play with 5 different quarterbacks, they got to the playoffs and were 11-6. If they can get to the playoffs with just average quarterback play, then you have a chance. For the Browns to go deep, to win it all, Watson is going to have to play much better than average. He's going to have to play top tier, top 10 or 12, but down the stretch. Let's give him the season, get him ready. If he never gets it going all year, then you start questioning things. But I'm confident he's going to have a good above average year. That's not what they brought him in for. But I think that if he just plays in the top half of the NFL rankings among quarterbacks, the Browns will be in a great shape. They'll make the playoffs, and then they'll have a chance to win it all. And that's when he needs to play his best.
Yeah, and the one thing with a really good defense, don't turn the ball over. We saw how that turnovers will kill a really good defense. This from Pro Football Network, one bold prediction for every NFL team. Browns, their bold prediction, they win the AFC North. As tough as the North is, somebody has to win it. That could very well be the Browns, who pushed Baltimore last year despite getting just 6 games out of Deshaun Watson and 2 out of Nick Chubb. Both key players, several others who were hurt in 2023, should be ready to contribute again this season with a loaded core remaining otherwise intact. The only reason it's a bold prediction is because the Browns haven't won the division since 1989. But, as they say, somebody's got to win that division.
I think it's a bold prediction just because you can make the case all 4 teams could win the division or all 4 teams could get last place. The Browns could finish 1 through 4. Any of the teams could. They play each other 6 times. And again, I've said it, it's the health, primarily even of the quarterback. Burrow goes down last year, Bengals get last. Jackson stays healthy, he's MVP. The previous 2 years he goes down, they don't perform or do at all what they wanted to. So it really is so much on the health, primarily at the quarterback position. But yeah, I can see that. I can see him. I think that controls your destiny because you make the playoffs if you win the division and you get a home game. Even last year, the way it ended with Houston, the Browns were 8-1 at home. And I think with a rookie quarterback, no, but coming in a playoff game to Cleveland Browns Stadium, the Browns would have had a much better chance playing outdoors in Cleveland, against the Texans in that playoff game. So that's why it's so important to win the division. You can still make the playoffs like you did last year, but I really think that's where all your focus needs to be. And the one good news is with Nick Chubb missing at least the first 4 games, they need him more down the stretch, second half of the season. And so that will be what it's predicated on. So, yeah, I think it would be bold, but I think they can do that. Again, Deshaun Watson just stays on the field this year.
So This is interesting. Every Browns quarterback since Kevin Stefanski has been head coach has been more efficient in 12 personnel. So that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends, rather than 11 personnel, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Since 2020, Browns passing offense out of 12 personnel is 5th, out of 11 personnel is 25th. The thing that I would say is that's exactly why you changed and are going out of the shotgun and changing the offense, because that is a guy that is play action and drop back, and that's not what shouldn't ask Deshaun Watson to do that. Can he do it? Sure he can do it. He's an NFL quarterback. He excels when you let him see the field, look at the matchups, identify the matchups, and then pick the defense apart.
Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, if they only keep 2 tight ends, which I think they will, they may have a 3rd picked up, but you're going to see them, out of the 11 personnel. And that is exactly why they went out and made all the changes. Now, we haven't seen it because Watson didn't play in the preseason. He practiced. He struggled in some of the practices, but he also had some good moments. He's a notorious slow starter. Last year, he didn't have the greatest game against the Bengals, but the Browns won. But then he started ramping it up and got going until he got hurt. So that's the whole idea, is let him make a quick decision, get the ball out to one of his backs, his tight end, his playmakers, and let them, kind of how he finished the game he got hurt because of his limitations in that game, playing with a broken bone in his shoulder and a high ankle sprain. He was 14 of 14 and led the Browns in that comeback win over the Ravens. I don't see why they wouldn't mirror that same, game plan. Let him just get the ball, let him do what he's comfortable, get the ball out, and make things happen if need be with his legs. So I think that's what you're going to see. That's what they're banking on, is playing to his strengths.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, is always great stuff. Make sure you check him out. He will have the latest as the Browns get down to the mandatory 53 tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Great stuff as always. Thanks very much, Fred. Appreciate it.
All right, Dave, thanks for checking in with me.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, he is the senior analyst, always really good Browns coverage, as the Browns now less than 24 hours away from getting down to that 53-man roster limit. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.